Hello everyone, I am the Medic Kirby, and welcome to my channel, The Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Brewery is a series on this channel showcasing my spicy brews and other deck techs. On this episode of The Brewery, I'll be discussing my take on a commander from Outlaws of Thunder Junction, Obeka, Splitter of Seconds. If you like this deck or any of the cards I'll be mentioning throughout the video, please consider using my TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing those cards. You can find that link down in the description. It'll really help out the channel at no extra cost to you. But the very best way you can help support the channel is with my Patreon. There are plenty of perks for being a patron, such as early access to certain videos, exclusive deck techs, gifts, and more for as little as $1. You could also become a channel member for just 99 cents. Show off your support with a logo next to your name and exclusive emojis. Or you can always just support my channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and sharing, which also helps out a lot. I put out a video every Monday, so you don't want to miss out. You can join my Discord server for free if you want to join the Commander Tavern community. All pertinent links are down in the description. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Obeka is a 2/5 Ogre Warlock with Menace for 1 generic, 1 blue, 1 black, and 1 red. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, you get as many additional upkeeps as damage dealt. So, if she dealt 5 combat damage to an opponent, you get 5 upkeep steps after the combat phase, before your post-combat main phase. I absolutely love this ability, so much so that I built Obeka by thinking outside of the box. Contraptions. Now, before you close this video and yeet your phone in disgust, hear me out. If you go to the video's description and follow the link to my deck list for Obeka, you will find a 17 card sideboard on Moxfield. Not only that, but I left 12 cards that didn't make the cut in the Considering tab. The reason there's a 17 card sideboard is to take out the 17 cards associated with the Contraption suite of the deck. That way, if you're facing someone who won't let you run the silver bordered cards in the deck, or if you're a viewer that only builds decks solely with the Commander ban list, you can still build a Commander legal deck from it. Just swap them out with the sideboard and you're set. Alright, first things first, how do contraptions work? Contraptions go in a secondary deck similarly to attractions. Your contraption deck must contain no less than 15 unique contraptions. Since it's singleton, you can have from 15 to 44 contraptions in your contraption deck as of the making of this video. Keep in mind that you cannot run Sapsucker in this deck because it has a green color identity. The other 44 have a colorless identity though, so you're fine with them. Once you have your attraction deck, the crank counter begins on the 3rd sprocket. I just put a glass aquarium bead on top of the contraption deck to keep track of the track counter and use clear sleeves to see the back of them since that's where the instructions are, just like with attractions. You take the top card of it and put it onto your battlefield whenever an effect says assemble a contraption. When you put it onto the battlefield, you have to choose one of 3 sprockets, 1, 2, or 3. Essentially, these are 3 imaginary columns on the battlefield dedicated to contraptions. Then, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a contraption, move the crank counter to your next sprocket. If it's on 3, it goes back to 1. This will trigger all contraptions in that column. And now you see why I built my Obeka deck around contraptions. This means that with multiple upkeep steps, you can crank multiple contraptions by moving the crank counter. The goal being to trigger as many contraptions as possible since they have so many useful abilities. For this particular deck, I am running the 31 contraptions I felt performed best in order to not bog down the contraption deck with attractions that can't give me immediate value. First, let's see the contraptions and how we assemble them. Again, if you do not want to include contraptions, just don't have an attraction deck and swap out the cards associated with them in the sideboard of my deck list. Hard Hat Area and Widget Contraption are 2 of the best ones since they assemble contraptions, further chaining into more contraptions. I suggest putting these in different sprockets in order to assemble more contraptions with each move of the crank counter. Dispatch Dispensary, Fairy Airy, Gift Horse, Gnome Ball Machine, and Rapid Prototyper create tokens which can help us close out games. I mean, we're realistically going to probably win via commander damage, but at least this gives us blockers against other decks that go wide. Or, you could also go wide yourself if you manage to get a ton of extra upkeeps. BB Gun, Guest List, Jamming Device, Mandatory Friendship Shackles, Sundering Fork, and Thud for Duds are other incredibly useful ones since they provide interaction when triggered. The strategy for these contraptions is to place them on the very next sprocket if you still have extra upkeeps steps left over. That way, you can use its trigger as soon as possible. In any case, remember that you still trigger contraptions in your regular upkeep, so you can get even further value from them. Hypnotic Swirly Disc, Insufferable Siphon, and Neural Network also provide disruption in the form of milling and discarding. The deck still has multiple ways of making opponents discard cards, mill cards, and get things blown up, but being able to do so repeatedly is what makes it worth running contraptions, especially since they literally don't take up slots in your deck. Boom Flinger, Division Table, and Dual Doom Suits are included as ways to close out the game. The first 2 burn opponents while the third one doubles the damage our sources deal this turn. Dual Doom Suits are amazing if we trigger them in our actual upkeep, so if you plan a bit ahead, you can figure out when that would happen. Giving Obeka double damage goes a long way, so this is amazing both before combat as well as after combat with the deck's upkeep damage effects. Arms Depot, Top Secret Tunnel, and Turbo Thracking Auto Hammer are more ways to pump Obeka. The last two unfortunately need to be cranked before combat in our actual upkeep step, so plan accordingly. That being said, they're too good to pass up since they make Obeka unblockable and give double strike respectively. Arms Depot is more permanent since it gives +1/+1 counters, so it doesn't matter when it triggers. Optimal Optimizer and Record Store are card advantage contraptions. These are pretty straightforward but aren't the only way we draw cards during our upkeeps, but we'll soon see those. Lackey Recycler, Pet Project, and Refibrillator provide recovery in the form of top-decking dead creatures, recovering dead creatures, or reanimating opponents' dead creatures. These are amazing at helping us keep getting our creatures back, assuming no one exiles them from our graveyard, of course. Auto Key, Duplication Device, Dog Snail Engine, and Total Stick Charger provide more utility, with these varying between gaining us life, twiddling creatures, or shapeshifting. Gaining life is incredibly important in this deck since Obeka is a commander players are very scary of. Also, in the deck's colors, a lot of its card draw engines require life to function. The deck has other life gain effects, but we'll see those soon. As for how we'll be assembling contraptions, Wrench Rigger, Crafty Octopus, Steady-Handed Mook, Garbage Elemental, Steam Flogger of the Month, Steam Flogger Temp, and Overt Operative, I'll do so upon entering the battlefield, except Steam Flogger Temp since you can assemble a contraption for 6 generic and tapping. Keep in mind that this is the version of Garbage Elemental you need, the one that assembles a contraption when entering the battlefield. Now, this might seem like a one-time only deal, which is one main reason why I'm not running all 44 possible contraptions in the contraption deck. However, the deck is running Endless Evil, Followed Footsteps, and Extravagant Replication. I absolutely love these enchantments. If any of the first two enchant any of the previously shown riggers, then each upkeep we create a token copy of it, assembling another contraption, which will then get cranked in our next upkeep. So if you have multiple extra upkeeps, you'll be assembling your entire contraption deck in no time. Mirror Hall Mimic also has the ability, but when you disturb it. That being said, its front side is amazing since it's a clone effect. However, once it dies, we can disturb it for the side we actually care about, which is yet another token copying aura. These 4 token copying effects along with the 13 contraption assembling cards would be the 17 cards you swap out for the sideboard if you're not playing with attractions. That being said, these 4 cards are still amazing in a Thunder Junction Obeka deck. Going back to assembling contraptions, Steam Flogger Boss, the one that started it all, has your riggers assemble an additional contraption, so you're essentially getting 2 contraptions for the price of 1. As a bonus, it also pumps other riggers and gives them haste. Insight, Spell Suck, Work a Double, Finders Keepers, and Steam Floggery are spells that assemble contraptions. The first one is absolutely busted as a mana sink since we can assemble X contraptions. Spell Suck and Finders Keepers are a bit steep to cast but still provide interaction as well as a way to assemble a contraption. Obviously the deck is running better interaction, but these aren't so bad as to not include. Alright, with all that fun stuff out of the way, surely the deck can move on to more serious things, right? Nope, more shenanigans are to be had. The initiative is another effect that triggers during your upkeep, assuming you have the status. When you have the initiative, you venture into the Undercity. If you're speedrunning this dungeon multiple times in a single turn due to Obeka giving you tons of extra upkeep steps, you'll inevitably travel through Trap a bunch of times. And not just Trap, but each other room on the left side of the dungeon, making Obeka bigger via Forge, drawing cards via Archives, and finally cheating a creature with Throne of the Dead 3. The deck doesn't have amazing creatures to cheat in, but getting a Rigger is good enough for me. You're also getting a basic land into your hand with Secret Entrance, so this dungeon does it all. Cave of Chaos Adventurer, Ravenloft Adventurer, Tomb of Horrors Adventurer, and Rissa Rael Kingpin is how we're getting the initiative. These give us the initiative on entering the battlefield and also provide us further advantage if we've completed a dungeon. The red one gives us Impulsive Draw, the black one exiles killed creatures, and the blue one has us twice copy our second spell. Rissa provides important keywords in the form of Death Touch and First Strike on top of a +5/+0 boost, which Obeka loves. Speaking of boosting Obeka's power, the harder she hits, the more upkeeps we get. To that end, I included the pump spells I felt worked best with the deck, these being Balduvian Rage, Enrage, Howl from Beyond, and Lunar Frenzy. Casting these in response to the damage step of the combat phase is something opponents will freak out over, needing to scramble to find ways to either kill Obeka or counter the pump spell. Demon Spine Whip provides a similar effect, but it's repeatable since it's on an equipment, and it only costs 2 to cast and 1 to equip, so it's amazing here. Speaking of equipment, Ring of Eva's Isle, Ring of Valkis, and Ring of Zathrid become trash turned treasure thanks to Obeka. Each of these rings puts a +1/+1 counter on Obeka each upkeep, making her ridiculously strong. Not only that, but they also provide other boons. The first one can give hexproof at instant speed for 2 generic, the second one gives haste, and the third one can regenerate Obeka for 2 generic. Again, amazing equipment. They're not the only ones though. Two-handed axe is another all-star here. You can send it on an adventure to give double strike at instant speed, but then you can cast it as an equipment that doubles Obeka's power when she attacks. If she's already huge, she can easily kill an opponent, and then you get dozens of additional upkeeps to kill the rest of the table. Speaking of double strike, Lizard Blades and Blood Mist are included just for that. I love Lizard Blades because if it's attached to Obeka and someone wipes the board, it falls off, but is still a creature that can block or be useful in other ways. Blood Mist is difficult to get rid of for being an enchantment. Swiftfoot Boots, Champion's Helm, and Mithril Coat are naturally included to protect Obeka. She's not that difficult to cast the first time, but the deck is centralized around her, so we have to protect her. Fortunately, the rings can give her hexproof and regeneration, but you're never wrong for running these. Now that we saw all of the fun the deck wants to do and how we go about it, we still need to draw cards, ramp, and interact with the board. In terms of card advantage, the deck is running Phyrexian Arena, Commander's Awakening, Haunted of Seeing Winds, Patient Rebuilding, Mind Unbound, and Staff of Nin. There's nothing really special about these apart from drawing us cards at the beginning of our upkeep. The Shrine and Staff might seem overcosted for a non-green deck, but while testing I found that if I was also running Black Market Connections and Call of the Ring, I was either losing a ton of life to draw cards or didn't draw any cards in order to not lose life. I found that the replacements, while expensive, were much better for my health. The Arena can stay because it's just one, and you can always find the life gain effects sooner than later. Speaking of, Inventor's Sphere and Venser's Journal do just that. Venser's Journal alone could help with the black enchantments, but not drawing into it was a huge bummer unless you tutored for it. As a bonus, the journal also gives you an unlimited hand size, which is important when you're drawing a card each of your 20-something upkeeps. This is why Reliquary Tower, Thought Vessel, and Decanter of Endless Water are also included. At the very least, the artifacts are mana rocks and the tower doesn't take up a slot on the deck, so they're worth running. Trust me. Tamiyo's Journal also provides card advantage in the form of clue tokens, so it's delayed card advantage or paying 2 to draw a card. That being said, you're going to be creating a metric ton of clues, and tapping the journal while sacrificing 3 clues is a tutor effect, which is great. There aren't any silver bullets in the deck, but being able to tutor for a response when you needed it is priceless. Speaking of interaction, the deck isn't playing many mean cards, but it still has to run a couple just to help us out while also hurting opponents. Midnight Banshee is one such card, unless your opponents are also playing black. That being said, if you're in a pod with players not playing black, this will essentially keep their board clear of creatures. It's still somewhat fair because it also keeps our board free of non-black creatures, so keep that in mind. Court of Ambition is another mean card since it's supposed to trigger at the beginning of our turn after we got it in play. However, if we play this in our pre-combat main phase, becoming the Monarch on entering the battlefield, then get extra upkeeps with Obeka after combat, we will be the Monarch for all of its triggers. This thing ends games, apart from just keeping opponents' hands free of cards. The deck's running An Offer You Can't Refuse, Swan Song, Counterspell, and Negate for its counter magic suite, Guthrie writes History for single target removal, Cyclonic Rift, Damnation, Blasphemous Act, and Invasion of Fiora for its board wipes. While all of these are self-explanatory, Invasion of Fiora can be attacked in order to transform it into Marquesa Resolute Monarch. She has a useful attack trigger, but more importantly, provides another card advantage upkeep effect, which the deck loves, making this card multi-useful here. Mystic Sanctuary is included to recover any of the previously shown interaction pieces, or even the contraption assembling spells. The deck is running all 9 fetch lands, of which half can fetch for this at instant speed in response to drawing a card for that pro gamer move. As for how we're powering the deck, mana acceleration is key. Here are some spicy lands to consider for your own deck: Bottomless Vault, Dwarven Hold, and Sand Silos. Just don't consider them as land slots. I don't because they enter tapped and you don't untap them in order to build up counters on them. So they're here to accumulate counters during each of your extra upkeeps. Then in your untap step, untap them. You can then tap them and remove a ton of counters to add a ton of mana. These help power the X-Pump spells as well as Insight. I love these lands. I love commanders like Obeka even more since she's another commander that turns bad cards good. Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoths helps these lands tap for mana normally if you're stuck with them early game or Obeka is stuck in the command zone. It also helps with the fetch lands in case there's nothing left to fetch for. That happens with the first room of Undercity. Replicating Ring is more amazing mana acceleration in the deck. This mana rock that hardly anyone uses is crazy here. It's so easy to create 8 replicated ring tokens, possibly even in a single turn. These mana rocks can then power pumping Obeka like previously mentioned. For me, it's even better than Soul Ring, which is in the deck because it's still useful to run. But getting 8 any color mana rocks like it's nothing? Replicating Ring puts Soul Ring to shame. Wayfarer's Bauble, Sword of the Animus, Bitterthorn, Nissa's Animus, and Sword of Hearth and Home are the colorless land wrap effects in the deck. It doesn't have access to green, so we need to make do. That being said, Sword of Hearth and Home is absolutely busted here in every sense of the word. It gives Obeka protection from 2 colors not in our deck, plus gives a +2/+2 pump. Not only that, but when she deals combat damage, she can blink one of our creatures. Almost all of our creatures have enter the battlefield triggers, whether to assemble a contraption or give us the initiative. So good. The rest of the deck is just the rest of the lands. The deck's running all 3 shock lands, all 3 opponent lands, Xander's Lounge, Command Tower, and Ancient Tomb, as well as 3 islands, 3 mountains, and 2 swamps for all the basic land wrap effects in the deck. As with all of my deck techs, you can build your mana base according to your budget. Whether you include more expensive cards or even cheaper cards is up to you, you do you. This brew is just an idea of how to build around Obeka's Splitter of Seconds. Is this the Obeka list? Absolutely not. You can do many powerful things with her, such as Suspend, running all of the court enchantments, all the thievery effects, etc. But I figured that you could probably see all those things in EDH Rec or other people's lists, trying to break Obeka as hard as possible. However, I wanted to do something a bit more fun with Obeka and a bit lower power, while still being capable of winning games. Yes, you're cranking a ton of contraptions and speedrunning Undercity multiple times, but it's not a super fast way to end games. That being said, remember that the sideboard of the list on Moxfield can make the deck Commander legal, because for some reason these cards aren't legal in Commander even though it's lauded and marketed as a de facto casual format, but I digress. If you're interested in the deck list of this spicy brew of mine, you can find a link to it down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the brewers, for their patronage. I'd also like to thank anyone using my TCG Player affiliate link. That also helps out the channel. I also want to thank any channel members. Your membership is greatly appreciated. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of The Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I am the Commander Kirby, and happy brewing.